Today, let's talk about some of the farms you're going to try out on your league starter or a second character of the league. We're going to go over what kind of builds struggle with these farms. I'm sure someone will disagree with me, so let me know any corrections you would like to make to my list down below, of course. Most of these league start farms will have guides on max roll as well, so check out the currency section over there, made by Grimro and Milky, for a little extra guidance if any of these pique your interest. First off is an absolute classic. So many people farm this every league. It's been recommended so many times, I've even done it myself, and that's going to be essences. Now, with essences in red maps, they're obviously super brutal. Pretty much everybody knows this, man. Red map essences on league start are really, really brutal. They get a lot of damage. They're going to teleport to you, or they're going to teleport you to them. And with arch nemesis modifiers, they're really getting up to some tomfoolery. The thing is, most builds, though, will be able to farm them in a white map, especially if you've progressed your Atlas enough to a point where you have all of the essence nodes on your Atlas tree. I would imagine your character at that point would be about ready for red maps anyway, so jumping all the way back down to white maps makes them trivial. And you would want to be farming them in white maps anyways, because you would probably want to pair essence with bestiary, which has been a classic for many, many leagues. Now, keep in mind, this farm is a little bit of a bait if you do it on day 1 and 2. In my personal experience, nobody was really buying essences at a decent value until day 3+. So you may just want to start with something else and move on to this after the first few days into the league. If you're a juicer, if you're a blaster, and you're not going to be at day 3 starting to do a currency strategy, right? Keep that in mind. In white maps, almost every build is going to have an easy time farming these essences and beasts. But in red maps, you will need your league starter super online before essences become very comfortable, where you don't have to worry about randomly dying or, something being way too tanky and way too boring to kill. This next farm is more for your second character of the league, but thought I'd throw that in there after a white map farm. That's going to be Deli. Let's talk about Delirium. So Deli is really rough on builds that don't have much avoidance at all, or that just don't really have much beef to them, right? Avoidance or any mitigation. You've got to also have some kind of built-in recovery for it to feel comfortable. Stuff like life on kill, using blood notch and the stun tech, a recovery on block mechanic, etc. You got to have some sort of recovery, because in Delirium, there's just so many monsters. And when you're farming Delirium, I'm not talking just, deli mirrors, right? More so like 60, 80 deli farming. There's just so many monsters. You're opening breaches. You're going to be opening boxes alongside Delirium, maybe even some beyond, Hunted Trader, etc. There's just so much stuff there that you need a really solid recovery. Just a life flask is not really going to cut it unless you have some crazy other defenses to compensate for how crap your recovery is. The monster density is just too much to not have a good recovery form. So, life on kill has just been an absolute classic if you're constantly killing stuff. But, nowadays, I've been doing stuff like on Ignite Vortex, you have suppression plus entrench, which is the suppression that gives you life last charges when you suppress spell damage, and you're suppressing spell damage all of the time in Delirium. So you can constantly press your life flask all the time. And that plus the stun tech and petrified blood made Ignite Vortex feel pretty comfortable when farming Delirium. On Corrupting Fever Champion, you've got really high mitigation and you've got pretty decent avoidance of damage. So you're just able, and you have some life on kill. So it's just set, right? CF Champ, you're just beefy, you've got life on kill, and you've got range. And the one thing both of these builds also have is an explosion. You're going to want to have a built-in explosion if you're farming Deli. This is kind of necessary just because of how many monsters there are, but also make quick work of any random rares that might be antagonistic towards your build. They might have, like on CF Champ, it might have a lot of like physical damage reduction, Ignite Vortex, maybe it's like Ignite resistant, stuff like that. Having the explosions there alongside whatever dot or whatever you're using to have a huge coverage over your screen is just going to make it feel real nice. So you kind of need to cover the screen of damage, and you kind of need an explosion. It takes a pretty good build to be able to do 80 deli on league start and not have it just be absolutely annoying to run. Also on Delirium, If you're farming 80 deli, you can make your map normal. You don't have to elk your maps, which do make them a lot more difficult. Now, honestly, this kind of bitch mode, I'm not gonna lie. Okay, but hey, man, if that's what you need to do to make some currency, then, you know, so be it. Okay, next up, Expedition. Something I recommend every single league. It's great. You get all the currencies you need. Vols, elks, fusings, jewelers, bindings, gowers, everything you need to progress your atlas, get your points, and, you know, maybe you get some divines and some logbooks and whatnot on top. It's really, really rough for specific builds if you are too impatient to read, or if, oh, I can't read. Okay, if you just can't. Builds that are relying on curses. So this was stuff like Impending Doom of last league. There's a hexproof mod, and the build would just be bricked. Because it's not highlighted in yellow, a lot of people just wouldn't be able to read it. Another is Ignite builds that need to read the Avoid Ignite modifier. That's a pretty easy one because it comes with all the other ailments, and just because of a big block of 100% chance to avoid, you do have to keep an eye out for that. And another one that I know of, there might be more, let me know down below, is low life builds, and they have to avoid the culling modifier because they are always below some percentage of life, and they will instantly die to every single hit if you play a low life build and take that expedition mod. So keep that in mind. Everyone else, all the other builds, you just need a build with a solid red mapping setup. You should be fine outside of rippy altar mods and crappy expedition mod combos. Expedition monsters can be really tough though in red maps before your build setup. So if you're doing this and it's not comfortable yet on your league starter, just pop down to some yellow maps or low reds, and you're still going to generate enough currency to get a few upgrades. And then you can go to normal T14 plus maps and to be able to get all that extra currency from stuff like red altars, which is really, really important that you do eventually. But if you got to dip down to yellow for, you know, or low reds for like an hour or two, then just do that, right? You just got to do it. Harvest farming is really rough on squishy builds because the monsters have such a crazy range of damage. Sometimes harvest monsters do nothing. Sometimes they will just one-shot you. It's absolutely absurd. And if they get a speed mod, like there's just so many random things that can happen to make them so annoying, right? Like all of the projectile spam from those weird snake things, or the big bear mom who just like one-shot slams you. Like, yeah, there's just some crazy combos that will just absolutely make quick work of your build. I'd really only recommend Harvest for builds that just delete the whole plot and the rare monsters super easily. Or if you have some explosions built in, you can take advantage of that to wait until the rare monsters spawn from the plot, and then you kill all of the monsters at once. You let the normal monsters spawn because they spawn in waves now instead of all at once. So you just let the normal monster spawn, you wait, the rare monster spawn, you know, everything spawns, and then you kill it. You take advantage of your explosion to make quick work of the rares. That's a strategy you can use for harvest farming, you know, early on. But yeah, you kind of just need a ton of damage or, you know, some built-in explosion to make it pretty comfortable on league start. Now to the fun ones. Okay, Legion, log in, dude. Legion obviously is really bad for builds that don't have a crazy coverage on the screen. So stuff like Righteous Fire on league start. Now, pause the YouTube comments, okay? I get it, bro. If you're playing a juiced up Righteous Fire and you've got the Scorch Boots and maybe you've got an extra explosion somewhere and you've got a bunch of damage, that's sick, okay? But I'm talking early on the league, okay? Nobody's blasting Legion on RF on like day 2, okay? On day like 3, 4, 5. It's really, there's like 2 dudes that might be able to do that. It's just not happening. Other builds like stuff like Bone Shatter, it's not like horrible. Man, if you're doing like a Legion farm, right? Like if I'm going to farm Legion, I'm going to want to do it on something like Lightning Arrow or CF Champ. Something that's shooting projectiles. Yeah, that's pretty much just something that shoots projectiles. Some Ignite proliferating and explosion combinations can work as well. That's really not that bad. You just got to scale your damage enough and have good enough movement to be able to find whatever stragglers are left. But yeah, you really just need something that will spread and proliferate, or just projectiles that you shoot out from the middle and kill everything without having to move too much. As far as like tankiness, like, you know, Legion, you need a little bit, right? You've got to have something. Legion's been farmable on a bunch of squishy builds. If you've got enough damage, you just don't pop the general out. That's where you're going to die, right? And that's why nobody takes the general nodes, really. And, you know, the emblems aren't really worth much anyways. So not popping the generals out, and then you're able to make quick work of the rares, it's just a non-issue. But if you pop out that one Templar dude, he's just going to channel a huge beam. It's going to shoot a bunch of shit everywhere. And yeah, if you're kind of like a lightning arrow Deadeye, you kind of just like will die sometimes if you pop that guy out. So just don't. Easy. Breach. Next farm. It's kind of just like Legion, right? You can get away with an Ignite Proliferation build a lot easier with something like Breach. And things like Bone Shatter will do a lot better in stuff like Breach, where you don't need to just like pop out, you know, whatever the fuck in some odd amount of seconds. It almost feels more relaxing with Breach for some reason. You still got to have really good clear though, but it's a little more forgiving. You do need some damage avoidance though. You will have to, it's weird, but I feel like you'd almost need a little bit tankier of a build with Breach, especially because you're going to be doing a lot of stuff like Ul, Natul, and Chayula. Chayula having lots of fizz and chaos, generally something that squishy builds don't have a lot of mitigation against. Well, Natul spikes, they're just randomly going to delete you if you don't have a lot of evasion rating. They'll explode and you will die. Suppression and some good recovery. Any of the random Esh that you'll have to do, you know, these breaches, spawn an Esh monster. Sometimes that little MFer is going to get Soul Eater. Okay, you want to just have something where you don't instantly die to that monster. Okay, next. This one's fun. Sanctum. So Sanctum farming on builds that don't have easy access to damage and range is just really painful. Again, stuff like Bone Shatter, Righteous Fire is going to be really painful on something like this. You know, man, like even Cold Dot, I wouldn't really be comfortable. Yeah, you could do Sanctum on Cold Dot, right? But there's just going to be like a lot better builds out there for Sanctum. You've got stuff like SRS. I don't know how early you can set up something like Shockwave Totems, but that's another great one. Any of the Ballista builds are going to feel pretty good. So you've got like EA Ballista, you've got Toxic Rain Ballista. Those are going to feel so much nicer than, you know, some melee build having to hop up and get really close to some of these guys. You just need stuff that can almost automatically be killing things, right? I'm thinking of the room layouts where the guards will keep spawning and you've got to dodge that one fire skull trap in the middle. You want something where you don't have to like jump and kill the guy on the left and then jump all the way over there and kill the guy on the right. You kind of just want like your SRS to be doing it, your ballistas to be shooting. You just want some like dot, you know, like Cold Law would be pretty decent in this situation, but you know, you just want stuff that's a lot more automatic. You don't want to have to be using your brain too much to be fighting the monsters. On League Start, you know, you don't really have access to the one shot every single monster builds. You know, you're probably just going to be having to scuff it up a little bit. Hex Blast was a really good one for Sanctum too, though, just because of the desync between the mine and how much range the Hex Blast would auto target to. And so you would put your mine down and you can have detonate on left mouse button, or you can just be pressing detonate all the time. And your mines wouldn't actually detonate until a monster was within its range. And so that worked crazy well for Hex Blast, right? Like you could preload on the guards, you know, doing the whatever thing. That was another like really great build just because of how much range it had and because of how much kind of like pre-setup that you could do and how easy it was. Last one might piss some people off, but Coat Mauled, Seed, and Bald. Magic finding on League Start is not that good until you can go all in, okay? Just equipping quant gear on a random build, doing random maps is not worth it. MF Bone Shatter doing Elk and Go T16 is going to be so much worse than playing a normal Bone Shatter and doing an Essence or Expedition farm. Same with like MFCF. I had so many people asking me about Magic Find Corrupting Fever. That can be a great build. Once you have like a 40 Divine Wand and the Forbidden Jewels and like 5 Div Rare Jewels or whatever, right? You need it actually set up. As a League Starter, MFCF is absolutely not it, bro. Magic Finding is a specific thing you have to invest into before it becomes worth it. When you're playing an MF character, you're giving up mitigation, damage, quality of life, just so you can drop more items. If you're playing Magic Find, you need to be farming only slightly slower than you otherwise would be or you're just going to be generating so many less items over time compared to you just playing the faster build that is not dying all the time, or it, has the damage to clear actually be faster, right? If you're playing like a lightning arrow build on League Start, you're doing like LA Deadeye and you're blasting some farm. If you give up all of your gear and you equip some magic find items and your character is just so much slower, I mean, sure, man, you might have like however much quantity you're dropping more items, right? But you're not actually generating more items per hour. You're not actually getting any more currency per hour because your character is just so much weaker. You're farming less, you're dying more, you're not leveling up, you do less damage. It's just strictly worse for a really long time into League Start until you can get set up enough where you're doing like magic find and strong boxes and it's not an issue and you're able to blast those maps. But you got to get to that point. You can't just skip right there. Okay, magic finding and random T16 maps is kind of bad. Okay, it's just kind of bad. I'm sorry. Compared to a lot of other stuff, compared to just playing a normal build and blasting with red altars, it just ain't it. Last thing, it's kind of just a PSA, really. If you're adding Beyond to a farm, just make sure you got crazy clearing damage or a little beef on the build. Beyond monsters just hit way harder. They make it so frustrating to farm if you're doing something juicy with altars and you're adding them on top. You're just randomly going to get one shot all the time by Beyond monsters. I don't know why. No, I do know why, okay? This is why, okay? That's why Beyond monsters do so much more damage. They're just crazy, bro. Yeah, just watch out when you're adding these. You got to have a little juice on your bones if you're going to be trying to get them tainted fusings on League Start. Anyways, like and subscribe. Hope you liked the video. Catch me on my live stream. I'll see you guys in the next one.